Okay, so now that we've gone over the anatomy of plants, the different organs, the different types, and the way that they are structured, we can now get into some of the processes of plants. And so we're going to start with growth and development. So just a few terms for background and understanding. Growth is the irreversible increase in mass due to divisions and enlargement of cells. So cells can get bigger, or they can divide through mitosis, which we've also studied. And the adding of these cells is going to make them larger. You can have determinate growth, where things will grow to a certain size and then stop. So a lot of our annuals, they only have a certain amount of growth in which they will grow within a season before they will die. Or you can have indeterminate growth, and some great examples of these are the great redwood trees or the giant sequoia trees in the Pacific West and Northwest coast, where they will continually grow as long as they have the nutrients they need to grow. Within growth, we have also talked about differentiation, where cells, they all start kind of in a similar path in the in the zone of cell division. But as the root grows, these different types of cells will elongate and then differentiate into the different types, including to xylem, phloem, or parenchyma, or sclerenchyma, all those different types. So development then is the coordination of growth and differentiation of a single cell into tissues and organs. All right, eventually these are going to become leaves and stems and different parts of the plant. Alright, so each plant has different requirements for growth. And there are three basic things that affect how a plant grows. The first is nutrients, which furnish the elements, right? The carbon, phosphorus, nitrogen, these things which are essential for them, and the energy for plant growth and maintenance. Okay, so carbon dioxide, and most of these are taken from the air or from the soil, including water. Vitamins, these are organic molecules that are made or synthesized within the cells themselves, and they are required in small amounts for normal growth and development. They participate in reactions to make them go faster. They're catalysts. And then hormones, which are signaling molecules which are released from one point and then have an effect at a different point. So they travel through the plant and they have polar movement away from the source. Kind of similar to the way phloem flows from source to sink. So there are lots of different types of hormones, but we're going to talk about the classic 5, specifically auxins. We'll give examples of those in class, but there are also gibberellins, cytokinins, abscisic acid, and remember we talked about the abscission layer and the process of abscission in plants or the shedding of leaves, and ethylene, which is a ripening hormone. Okay, so all of these are kind of the classic hormones. There are a lot more, but these are just the ones that we're going to cover. So auxins, these move away from where they originate, so they are hormones, and they require an expenditure of energy in order to do so. So again, their movement is polar, and the way they move is they actually go through the parenchyma cells surrounding the vascular bundles. And the vascular bundles, of course, are around the xylem and phloem, which go through the leaf. So they can pass through these parenchyma cells throughout the plant. So xylem and phloem goes throughout the plant. Ethylene is the other one, which is produced by fruits, flowers, seeds, leaves, and roots, and is produced from the amino acid methionine, and it can trigger its own production. So this positive feedback where you have ethylene produced. The more that is produced, the more it will trigger the production of more, cause positive feedback. And this is the ripening hormone. So this will be used for plant developers that harvest fruits. They can harvest them when they're green, and then they are more firm usually before they are ripe. So like a green tomato or a green banana, they can transport them that way, and that way they will be more hardy and will not be bruised as easily. And then once they get to their source, they can expose them to ethylene to cause them to ripen. And it also causes leaf abscission. So we have an example here of a holly plant. When kept with a ripening tomato plant, that ethylene will cause the plant to shed its leaves. Alright, so plant movements, they can't exactly, get up and walk like animals can, but they do make slight movements which are important for its growth. Important for its homeostasis. So growth movements result from varying growth rates in different parts of an organ, and by alternating, like different sides of the plant, they can grow in different directions. Twining movements are visible spiraling growth. Okay, and so the stems of flowering plants will often have a spiral pattern arrangement to them, and tendrils as well. They will grab things and kind of spiral around in response to being touched. Contraction movements, we talked about contraction roots, which will pull the root bulb deeper down into the soil. And then there are also non-directional movements, nastic movements, and epinastic movements, which are permanently downward bending. Okay, so here's an example of a movement called mutation, which is this spiraling movement we talked about before, the twining movements. So what they did was they put this carbon paper, which will show a line as it's scratched, and if you loosely put it above this plant as it grows, the top leaf will touch that plant, and as it grows it will scratch a pattern. As you can see, it's a spiraling pattern because the plant spirals as it grows. So kind of cool. Alright, tropisms then are movements resulting from external stimuli. So there are lots of different types, and we'll just mention them here. Phototropism, photo refers to light, so it's going toward or away from light. Gravitropism is response to the stimulus of gravity, so most things will grow kind of away from gravity, up. Thigmotropism is contact with a solid object, so there are some plants, when you touch them, they will fold up and move away from the stimulus. Chemotropism is for chemicals. Thermotropism, movement towards away temperature. Traumatropism, movement towards away wounding. Electrotropism for electricity. Scototropism for darkness, and aerotropism for oxygen. Okay, then you also have taxic movements, taxis, which is the whole entire plant or reproductive cell moving. Does not really occur in flowering plants, but will occur in other types of plants like ferns, which have a flagella or cilia, which can move. So here's some fern sperm here. They can move in water, toward or away from a stimulus. They can be chemotaxic, phototaxics, aerotaxic. They can, like the sperm in ferns, swim toward this chemical hormone produced by females, pheromone, well actually an allomone, which will cause the sperm to move towards it. But they can also move towards light or oxygen. So other things that will affect the growth and development of plants include the sunlight, or the photoperiod, which changes depending on your latitude. And I have this little graph here that shows, the at a latitude of 0 degrees, that would be the equator, you don't have really any change in photoperiod. So 12 hours of sunlight, 12 hours a day. But as you go further and further away from the equator at 60 degrees, you get these large shifts throughout the year, where you can have 18 hours of sunlight in the summer and then 6 hours of sunlight in the winter. So there are different types of plants which will only grow in different photoperiods. Intermediate day plants will only flower within a photoperiod. It's not too short or too long. So grasses are generally like that. You have day neutral plants. These will flower with a minimum amount of light necessary. So as long as it meets a minimum, it doesn't carry how much light is there. And this is typical of tropical plants: beans, carnations, cotton, roses, and tomatoes. There are lots of vegetative activities, so the growth of stems and leaves, which are affected by phototropism, including the dormancy of buds and the germination of seeds. And of course, this phototropism or periodism is where this sunlight then acts as a trigger to prepare plants for their seasonal plant growth. They want to grow in the summer and be dormant in the winter. So some of the things that can help with this dormancy or coming out of this dormancy include chemicals called phytochromes and cryptochromes. So phytochromes are pigments that control photoperiodism. It's a pale blue proteinaceous type pigment that absorbs light and is mostly found in meristematic tissues. So those responsible for your initial growth. There are two stable forms. PR absorbs red light and PFR absorbs far red light, and when either of them are absorb light, they are converted to the other form. PFR is the active form, and that will then cause the biological response, and after it will be disintegrated. Okay, so red light will then trigger the biological mechanism. So phytochromes and this mechanism is important for plant development, changes in plastids, production of anthocyanins, and detection of shadings. So anthocyanins, of course, were pigments found in leaves. Cryptochromes then are blue light sensitive as opposed to red light sensitive, and they play a role in circadian rhythms. So what they do throughout a day, a single day, whether they are exposed to sunlight or maybe their buds or flowers will open during the day and close at night, so on and so forth. Okay, temperature is also, of course, very important for plants, along with sunlight. If it's too hot, a lot of plants won't be able to grow. If it's too cold, there won't be any growth as well. So each plant has this optimum temperature. Here's a bunch of different agricultural species which have different optimal temperatures for growth. And then there's a minimum and a maximum in which they won't grow. So the thermoperiod then is the optimum night and day temperatures for growth, and you can see them. That would be the peaks of these curves of these different agricultural grasses. Now, there are periods, of course, when growth doesn't occur, and that usually is dormancy. So this is inactivity of seeds, buds, bulbs, other plant organs, when temperature, water, or day length would typically cause growth. Okay, so typically they could, but for whatever reason they are dormant. Quiescence then is the state when the seed cannot germinate until conditions are favorable for growth. So this may occur in like a desert where it's quiescent for years until there is enough rain to go through its full germination and growth cycle while there is moisture available. After ripening are factors that control changes from dormancy to germination in seeds, and you can artificially cause or break dormancy and cause germination through a process called stratification. That's going to be different depending on the type of seed. Alright, that's it for our plant behaviors and in growth and development.